Hello, the claim I will be refuting today is America's judgment is defined by racism. My opponent's secondary claims were racial discrimination in the law system weigh in favor for the non-colored. 2, social media provides everyone with a voice. And 3, police treat the minority differently from whites. The first claim, again, being racial discrimination in the law system weigh in favor for the non-colored. My opponent used two different cases, Brock Turner versus People and the Brian Banks case. Although these two cases were good, the examples were explained more than the actual claim being proposed. This is problematic because it can mislead the audience to think the speech is more informative than argumentative. One of his sub-points to the main claim was that African American men get longer sentences than white men for the same crime. The statistic he provided came from United States Sentencing Commission, which stated black male offenders receive sentences on average 19.1% longer than similarly situated white male offenders during the post-report period. But this statistic was only for the fiscal years of 2012 to 2016, and we're in 2019, so it's a little outdated. If he would have connected his examples back to the claim and why they supported the claim overall would have been more successfully proven. Another way the first claim could have been rephrased is that the judicial system is biased against people of color, because the evidence he could use that because Brock Turner only served 3 months in prison, whereas Brian Banks served a little over 5 years for the same crime. Moving on to the second claim, which was social media provides everyone with a voice. The example of Mark Knight's cartoon on Twitter was not the best example to use for this because a generalization was made about America's judgment based on one person's cartoon and beliefs. That was again posted on Twitter. Also, the March for Life incident in itself can be its own argument based on the point made that Donald Trump influences others through social media. During the speech, there were a lot of things not accurately described about that incident. Researching more about the March for Life organization, that incident, I found an article in the Washington Times which stated, "For our rush to judgment and initial statement based on incomplete and misleading information, we apologize," said the March for Life in a statement. Leading to my counterclaim that social media is not the best place to draw any conclusions from. There are so many news outlets and people who covered this story, and every story was a bit different, with different positions on what exactly happened. Suggesting that the March for Life was one of the victims believing another news's thoughts that the teens initially harassed the Native American. Moving on to the third claim was that police treat the minority differently from whites. The opponent used 3 cases where it was suspected that the cop intentionally shot the black individual. There is no clear evidence stated when giving the speech. All 3 of these examples were explained by saying that the individuals were shot just because they were black. In the Root article written by Michael Harriet stated that Willie McCoy was shot because the police officers saw him reach for the gun. In an email, a police spokesperson maintained that Willie was not asleep during the entire incident, explaining, "He woke up on his own and sat up, reached for the handgun when the officers told him to show them his hands, then the officers fired." For one of the examples he used, the jury found the police officer not guilty. According to an NBC News article written by Chelsea Bailey titled, "Terrence Crutcher's shooting by Tulsa police was tragic but justified," jury foreman. Crutcher failed to respond to commands and reached into the driver's side window while approaching his car. Believing Crutcher was reaching for a weapon, it is possible she acted exactly as her training would dictate, the foreman wrote. Overall, although it can be argued and proven that America's judgment is based by racism, it's crucial to have all the facts and best possible examples. Thank you.
All right, the main issue that I see as being a little bit problematic in your argument is that it's not as much of an argument as is a critique. There are several times when you're suggesting here's how the argument could have developed more effectively, or here's a piece of information that would have made the argument better. Your goal is not to show us what they could do better. Your goal is to show us that their argument should not be accepted as presented. I'm not sure on the first point. I mean, you repeat the example that the advocate used. You suggest that there's some problem with the statistic, but the only problem with the statistic is that it is from a time period of 4 to 6 years ago, and why that's out of date, I'm not quite clear on. Whether or not there's even more updated information, since it looks like it's a 4-year period that's covered there, and we haven't finished the next 4-year period. It seems to me like that's maybe not a reasonable press on this particular argument. And then you suggest that they rephrase the claim and suggest and say it a different way. And I'm going, that's completely not the point of what you're supposed to be doing here. So I think you've kind of missed the point on that first issue. On the second point, I got a little bit confused about what it was that you were trying to talk about. I suddenly remembered that this was the reference to the March for Life demonstration where the Native American and the high school students had some kind of confrontation, and your explanation of what happens here is even more ambiguous than what the advocate's explanation was. So I'm not sure how I should look at this information, except that maybe we shouldn't be trusting social media. Okay, so how does that connect to this notion of race as the means by which we are making decisions? The social media thing seems to suggest that if everybody's got access to it, then it's not limited to what group gets to promote what cause or belief system. Everybody can promote whatever cause or belief system it is. That seems pretty equanimous. That's not the word I'm looking for. Well, it seems relatively equal, I guess, is the phrase that we're looking at. And again, I'm not sure what it is that you want us to decide based on the case that was being used. And then on the last point, I do think here you do attempt to respond to the particular examples by suggesting that in this case there was a prosecution, the jury looked at the evidence, they reached a conclusion that suggested that it was justified under the circumstances, and so that seems to suggest that it's not a race issue. It was within policy. It was done for a particular reason, that the police officer felt threatened in this particular circumstance. The proof on the other claims is not really discussed whatsoever. I think that that's problematic. I don't remember that the advocate provided any proof. They just gave the conclusion. So I think there's probably a little bit more of an argument you can make there. All right, and then it finishes up as a critique again. All right, thank you.